From the world headquarters of BaseNet, with reports from Arlington and Boston, Massachusetts, to Los Angeles, New York City, the Midwest, and everywhere in between, you're watching WorldviewZ with Allison Lee. I'm Gene White. And now join me in welcoming our host, Allison Lee.
Thanks, Gene, and welcome everyone to the first episode of WorldviewZ. I'm your host, Allison Lee. Some of you may recognize me as the most recent host of BaseNet's news magazine show, After Dark. Well, we've decided to change the name of After Dark to WorldviewZ. I, along with the senior management at BaseNet and my senior correspondent, Herb Fuchs, decided that the title After Dark really didn't reflect the content of the shows that we were producing. So how did we come up with the name WorldviewZ? Well, we looked through BaseNet's archives and we saw that we'd used WorldviewZ as the title of a show several times in the past. So we had the graphics, the marketing, and we knew that you, the viewers, would recognize it as a show produced by BaseNet. So let's get started. A lot of you longtime viewers may also notice that the background of this first episode of WorldviewZ is also the same background that was used for the first episode of After Dark. So you'll see that we've come full circle. This first episode, we have our national news coordinator, Hurley, interviewing Michael Dotterer. Michael Dotterer is a former pro football player. He began his career at Stanford University, where he was one of only 24 two-sport All-Stars in Stanford University history. He was also part of the LA Raiders team that won the 1984 Super Bowl championship. Michael is now an entrepreneur focusing on network marketing, and Holly sat down with him to talk about his diverse career. Over to you, Holly.
So thank you, Allison, and I am so excited to be on the new rebranded WorldviewZ and the very first episode. This is really bringing it full circle for me, and I can't think of a better interview I have with me, Michael Dotterer here. And hello, Michael, how are you?
I'm great, Holly. How are you?
I'm excellent. Obviously, this is an exciting opportunity for BaseNet. Allison has told us a lot of, obviously, about your accomplishments all through your life, really. I mean, you know, Stanford, being All-American in two sports, being able to actually get drafted and play for the Raiders, and now working in network marketing online. And I'd really like to start with you from the beginning. I know that this doesn't happen by accident. So, you know, when did you start? When did you start playing sports? When did you know that was something you were going to be good at?
Well, I was very fortunate, Holly, because my father was a Major League Baseball player, so he was my hero. And he played for the Cincinnati Reds back in the 1950s, and it was really exciting because I grew up around sports, and my dad was always there to kind of help me and guide me. And my mother was very athletic. She loved sports. She was a softball player when she was in school. My mother grew up in Canada, and my dad grew up in upstate New York, in Syracuse, New York. So my parents were very, active in sports, so they encouraged me to play all different sports. And as a kid, I was born in Canada, so I played ice hockey. I ran track. I was a swimmer, basketball, baseball, American football. I mean, I kind of break up my life in quarters like a football game. So my first quarter, which was from birth to 25, I was all sports. So for 25 years, you name it, I played it.
Wow. Now you said both your parents were very active, you know, on the Crashing Glass podcast that I do on the BaseNet network, not to shamelessly plug myself. I work with a couple of ladies who are also athletes. Jill, my co-host, coaches track, and she talks about how important having active parents has been for her, and definitely I think in her children's life. Do you think that having active parents were a big part of your success both on the field, maybe and in school as well?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, that's something that parents are critical to any development of a child. I mean, the more active and involved the parents are, children follow. So I was very fortunate. My parents were very active in my upbringing and encouraging me, throwing me in the pool and throwing me out on the court, and they didn't push me in the sense that they wanted me to do this or that. They just got me out there. Half the battle is showing up. So they would drive me to the events, and I think that's really important. Unfortunately, I think today we live in a society where sometimes parents are working so hard just to pay for the mortgage and put food on the table that they're not there as much as maybe my parents were, and that concerns me that we don't have enough time for our children, and that's one of the reasons why I'm in this amazing industry, social marketing. I actually call it social marketing versus network marketing, because network marketing, for whatever reason, for some people has a negative connotation because it's been very difficult. Not many people have achieved what they would have hoped for when they got into network marketing. So the industry, the internet, actually, social media, social networking is changing the industry. So what's wonderful is I'm in an industry that I hope will enable parents to spend more time with their children, because you don't have a boss. It's not an 8-to-5 job. A lot of mothers, we call them mompreneurs, not entrepreneurs, but mompreneurs. And it's a revolution. We call it the social commerce revolution. So the more I think about it, I mean, actually I never thought about this, but what my parents were able to do for me, I'm in an industry that I'm trying to create an environment so that parents can do for their children what my parents did for me, which is they gave a lot of time. They were around when I was growing up.
Well, and I know that there's even a delicate balance that starts from childhood. It's not as a kid who's into sports, you have to have that balance. And I know especially kids who became professional athletes, at least that I grew up with, there's always a balance of how do you make enough time to excel at your sports and also get your grades in. And do you think having your parents around helped you do that? Because I mean, you went to Stanford. That's not one of those schools that'll recruit you if you're slacking in your grades. So I imagine there was some balance in your life.
Yeah, there was balance. I mean, when I say, sports, though, I think what I was taught, I mean, sports provided me the discipline. I mean, you had to get up and show up at the right time, and you had to eat the right foods to have the proper nutrition and energy. So sports actually, I think, kept me, on the path and complemented my academic life, it was a symbiotic relationship. I think, and it doesn't just have to be sports. It can be theater. You can be involved in the chess club, the chemistry club. You have that feeling, but you can be part of an orchestra, the band, a symphony. I think that again, all that credit. I mean, I was very very fortunate to have parents that really got me active and engaged. And I look back, had I not had that, I might be in San Quentin right now, because, I think that's what, and I don't say that jokingly, but I mean, I look at people who do get into trouble, and I think it's because their parents aren't as involved as they probably want to be, for whatever circumstances. So we need to create an environment, a culture where parents are there, have the ability to spend time with their children. You study anthropology. That's one thing I learned when I went to the London School of Economics. I studied this gentleman named Thorstein Veblen, who is up where you're located, Holly, up near Wisconsin. Actually, he grew up in Minnesota, and he wrote a book called The Theory of the Leisure Class, and he coined the phrase conspicuous consumption. And Fortune magazine called Thorstein Veblen the last person that knew everything. He died in 1929, and he was a student of anthropology. He did his undergraduate work at Yale, and he was just a brilliant thinker. And I just remember studying his work. And when you look at the human race, it's in our genetic code to care for our children. I mean, it's an innate instinct to want to take care of our offspring. So what happens? What is it in our society that creates an environment where a child doesn't get that nurturing, doesn't get that guidance? And that's where, as I said, and I know this is a long way around, social marketing, social networking, what we're doing right now, the technology today to not only connect, but also to create a commerce and an industry is unlike ever before. I mean, it's really exciting. We live in exciting times.
You know, during my MBA, we talked a lot about recruiting and about things that you unnaturally are biased towards in an interview. And I find that interviewing athletes, I tend to be any sport, like you said. I mean, I became more professional in say cheerleading. So some people may argue, well, hey, that's not a sport, that's not football, that's not whatever. But I find that there is a mentality to team sports that I think translates. And how have you seen that translate going into now, sort of branding online, social marketing, and being able to communicate with people online? Do you see a connection there?
Most definitely. And by the way, cheerleading is a great sport, as you know, Holly. I mean, they give scholarships for cheerleaders. So, I mean, what they do, it's amazing. So what you did in cheerleading, it's just as amazing a sport as any of the sports I played. So congratulations on achieving your success.
Thank you.
Yes, I think you're right about the connection. Sports is a way where you have to communicate. I mean, even if you're Tiger Woods. I mean, I really think of Tiger when he was during the early part of his career. Tiger said, it's not just me. I mean, I have my caddy, my mom, my dad, my golf coach. He created golf, even though we look at it as an individual sport. He was saying, I'm part of a team. And so I think what you're trying to articulate there is the interaction. We're social beings, and these technologies now that we have, like Google Hangouts and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and all the ways that we can share information. Instead of being afraid of this, we need to embrace it, and it can bring us closer together. And I believe, again, I know I'm maybe going off topic here, but what's happening on a massive scale is that everything is a social network. BaseNet, the network that we're on, is a social network, and I hope Ed Jupin and you and your team create a BaseNet club where I can join BaseNet for a nominal fee. Let's say it's $10 a year. I'm a member of BaseNet, or $10 a month, whatever you want the price point. And then you make me a partner. It's like buying a stock. So I become connected with BaseNet, and then when you like something, what do you do when you like something?
You get involved. You care about it. You start to input into the conversation about it.
And you start to share.
Yeah. You tell everybody you know.
Exactly. And that's where, and Ed and I have had this conversation where you can monetize that. And that's the revolution that is happening, where social networks are being monetized, and these networks reward sharing. And it's happening before me. I mean, it's really, really exciting. I was fortunate back in 1990, when you were just 10 years old, to get involved in the cellular industry, where the cellular business. And back then there were only 3 million cellular phones. And I remember people telling me, "Oh, I don't need a cell phone. I'm not going to use a cell phone." Well, today there's between 4 and 5 billion cellular phones. And I see that happening with these social networks. BaseNet, I'm excited because I want to be a member. I'm willing to take my hard-earned money and give it to Ed and say, "Ed, here's my membership for BaseNet." And then Ed's going to reward me. There's a software network where I can go out and tell my friends, "Hey, this is fantastic. You got to listen to Holly. She interviews all these famous people around the world, and she's up there in Wisconsin, and she's beautiful. You got to tune in to this. This is much better." And so you've partnered with me. And I see that. I mean, I'm very excited. So, and never before in history have we ever had this. We're now at a point now where it's not. You don't have to grow up in a privileged environment, or you go to the best schools. It really is. If you have a passion, whatever your passion is, there's more opportunities today than the history of humankind. But you cannot think linear. It's not linear, it's lateral thinking, if that makes any sense.
I think it does, but I would then ask the question, at some point, you were talking how your first 25 years, you played every sport, and then, eventually you became really, really good at two, and then professionally you did one, right? And over time, I think with branding, especially in a space like the internet where things are loud and there's a lot of noise out there, do you feel like people sort of have to find what they're best at? Is there sort of a trial and error where you may be good at a lot of things, but then eventually you have to find what your unique voice is to put out there on the internet? And sort of, do you have any recommendation for how a company or a person might do something like that?
Well, I think it's actually a great point. I think what's happening, Holly, I like to create a picture of social marketing today is like farming 200 years ago. All of us had a farm, and we lived on a farm. We were an agrarian society. 80-90% of the people lived on a farm. And we would plant carrots, and we'd plant wheat, and we'd have cows, and we'd have sheep. And what I see is now our farm is the social network. I mean, now, yes, I'm a big fan with President Obama and Mrs. Obama. They have a garden at the White House. I think we all should have, if we have an opportunity to grow our own food, I think that's wonderful. But not everyone's doing that, and I say that because we live in a capitalistic society. We're not yet, socialism hasn't gotten there yet. So technology, as we advance in a capitalist society, technology eliminates jobs. And the biggest crisis we have now is kids coming out of college who have incurred so much debt, and they're thinking, their parents told them there would be a job for them. Well, the job is, and unfortunately, many of them weren't taught, because we're in this crisis mode where they weren't taught how to employ themselves, and we're just now learning that the farm of today is the social network, is social marketing. And I know it might be complicated what I'm saying, but it's very clear to me that these social networks are expanding at the speed of light, and that young children, if there's parents out there right now listening, encourage your children to be involved and connect with people, and using these tools to connect with people all over the world, and then let them know, plant the seed that there's a monetization going on, that there's a value of sharing, that whether it's a product or it's an idea, that there's a value to that. And that's where in their capitalistic society, that value, I believe, is going to save our economy. Where the geniuses, the people that are writing the algorithms and the software, if we're sharing, there's a value placed on that. This information that we're providing today on BaseNet, there's a value. I think the music industry has gone through this tremendous change, and I was part of a network 8 years ago called Burn Lounge, and Burn Lounge grew and then it collapsed, and it was sad because they were monetizing the music industry, where if you shared music, there was a reward mechanism. If you go to a great movie, I'm waiting for the movie industry to set up, like I would love to see Paramount Pictures set up a network where I can become a member of Paramount Pictures Club, and if I go to a movie and I love that movie, I can share it with a friend, they become a member of the Paramount Picture Club, and there's a value to that. And that is what's going to save our economy, I guarantee you. But the challenge is the old, and I'm going to be pretty, maybe that, I don't know if this is politically correct, but the old white man who is in their 60s and 70s that control these big multinational corporations, which you, Holly, work for. Now, maybe a woman that's running it, but these companies don't want to give up their power. And, that's the struggle, because when you talk about what's the most addictive part of our society, is it, alcohol, drug addiction, sexual addiction, all these addictions that people, sugar addiction, I love sugar, sugarholic. Nothing compares to power. If I tell you, Holly, you have to be at work at 8 o'clock and you have to stay till 5 o'clock. There is, and I've seen it, there are people that love power. And that's where the revolution, we've got a revolution going on right now, which is a grassroots revolution where every person, doesn't matter if they go to Harvard or they didn't even graduate from high school, every person, the pyramid has collapsed and it's gone horizontal. And everybody can have a house. Everyone can go with good nutrition, and there's an abundance. It's a mentality of abundance. And again, I know I've thrown a lot here and I've gone on, but it's so exciting. I was at a convention this past weekend in Las Vegas with a social marketing company called Isogenics, and Isogenics is a perfect example. And this is just one of many. There's lots of great networks that are emerging all over the world, providing opportunities to people, especially baby boomers like me. I mean, Holly, I'm 52 years old, and there are a lot of guys and gals in their 50s. It's not easy to find a job. And we're living longer. I'm going to live into my hundreds. I will be a centurion because of the technology. So again, I apologize for going on, but I'm very excited about the world that we live in. The key is to get the message out to the leaders out there. If you have a company, an organization, and you want it to thrive, start a social network, just like Mark Zuckerberg did. He did it 10 years ago at Harvard. He created this little company, a little organization. I think he started because he wanted to find dates at Cambridge. And the thing that Mark didn't do is he didn't monetize it in a way that rewarded sharing. When I first heard about Facebook, I was in New York, where you went to college. And it was in 2005, I joined Facebook. And I told everybody I wasn't rewarded for that. Now, I love Facebook. I'm rewarded because I've been able to connect with people that I would have been out of touch with, the friends of mine that I went to high school with. And it's a great value. But just think if Mark Zuckerberg had monetized that and rewarded sharing so that every time I shared, there was a reward mechanism that went on. Think about that. What do you think about that, Holly?
Well, I wonder. There is. I think there'll be people who listen to this, and you'll think of companies like, say, Amway, or you'll think of, you'll think, okay, there's this aspect that leads to, okay, you get rewarded for signing people up that makes you think of, say, a pyramid scheme. But what I think is easier to get behind, or to kind of understand as, from a millennial generation standpoint, is, say, like the election of President Obama, right? Typically you have, and I'm not saying that there aren't now, especially some investors who are large scale, but the average donation for Obama in his first election was $10 a person. So then you feel like I invested in this president, as a person who, and it doesn't have to be a Democrat or a Republican. The point is that, each person feels a personal ownership and an investment in what is happening, and it changes the involvement level. But likewise, then when things don't happen that they personally want, they personally feel that they are being let down on their investment. So as you were talking about, it sort of feels like, I think maybe in the larger culture, you're talking the shareholders who like the power. It's very difficult when you have hundreds of thousands of shareholders as opposed to hundreds who you have to answer to that are invested at maybe a smaller level. And then you kind of wonder, can you democratize the content as well as, or the product. In the case if you have a product that you're creating, how does that work when you have all of these people investing, all these small investors who have a stake in what's happening and want to see something specific happen?
Well, I think that there's no doubt in my mind that the greatest model is giving everybody, this technology. You have software now that tracks the sharing mechanism, and there's no question that that's the future. I believe someday that Procter and Gamble, Kimberly-Clark, ConAgra, all of them are going to have social networks. They're going to have to reward sharing. I mean, there's so many companies out there. Since how would I say this? The challenge is, and this is where the shift is going on. Since the 60s, there have been over 50,000 direct sales / network marketing companies that have started since the 60s. And you mentioned Amway, and there's Herbalife, and there's Mary Kay, and there's Avon. Well, guess how many of those 50,000 have lasted longer than 10 years?
How many?
52.
52.
Which is terrible, and that's a terrible record. That's changing because of the millennials. People who are younger people are coming in with their ideas, their software, their energy, and they are changing the industry. It is becoming like farming, where if you go out and you plant a seed and you water it, it's going to grow. It's not a question of, oh, well, I have to be a good salesperson and I have to do this or that. There are systems being put in place where social marketing, employing yourself, there's no failure. All you have to do is put the work in and you'll reap the rewards. In the past, that wasn't the case, in my opinion. It's getting easier and easier. The challenge is to get someone like President Obama to talk about it. He never talks about social marketing, social networking as an industry. I've never heard him talk about it. Now that's changing because there's a woman, let me see here, I met the other night who's running for, here she is, she's running for state assembly here in Northern California. And here's her name, Teresa Cox. Teresa Cox is the first African American graduate in nuclear biology from Northwestern University. Teresa Cox for assembly. She's running for office for California State Assembly. She's a single mother running for office here in Northern California. There is not one African American assembly person in Northern California. Can you believe that?
No.
And anyway, she was at this meeting where most of the people at the meeting embrace social marketing.
I would argue, though, that President Obama, I mean, there was a Newsweek article not maybe 3 or 4 months ago that talked about how it was his social analytics team and the team that actually did the media for him online, and then the emails that they sent and the way that they tested what worked and didn't work was why he actually took the second term, was actually his game on the internet was the difference between he and Mitt Romney, that at the end of the day, it wasn't the wide-scale debates that we were having on CNN or on The Daily Show. It was what was happening on Twitter. It was what was happening in people's inboxes. It was what they clicked on and what they read online. Because, one of the arguments I always make to people during political debates is if you want to find out the truth about a candidate, go online, because it's all there. You can get the good, the bad, the ugly. You can get the unbalanced and the balanced, but you'll get it all, as opposed to just the one piece. I think I would argue he opened the door for people like Teresa Cox in probably a big way, and I would say that we can only go up from there.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you that he did embrace his campaign. No question, they embraced the social media world and used it very effectively. I mean, brilliantly. I mean, Mitt Romney and his team were left in the dust. No question about it. What I'm trying to say is that I'd like to encourage and challenge President Obama to take it to another level, which is talk about the industry of social marketing, and that and have someone on his staff, and I believe it's going to happen. I mean, this Teresa Cox, she worked in the Clinton administration, so the word's going to get out. And I agree. They understand the technology, but I would like them to say, hey, because there are people out there that don't like, quote, network marketing. They think it's a pyramid scheme. Well, if you have the president saying, hey, there are some great social marketing companies out there that everyone should be participating in. I mean, social marketing, I believe, is the new 401k for people that want to set up a retirement. If you're in a job, you need, in my opinion, you need to have a plan B. You need to have insurance. Social marketing provides you with that. Whatever the product or service is, seek out some social network that's monetized and that rewards sharing. It's just like if you're driving a car, they want you to have insurance, right? Well, in my opinion, whatever you're doing, every American should be part of a social marketing company. It's just, and I believe time will prove this, because I've been in the industry for 22 years. I've seen the evolution. I've fallen on my face. I know the what's out there, and I'm, it's kind of like baseball. You kind of can see the ball coming. I see it coming. Jeremy Rifkin, who's a fine economist from UC Berkeley, wrote a book 10, 15 years ago called The End of Work: How Technology is Eliminating Jobs. And what I see out there, 80% of the population, the Pareto rule, 80% of the population is not going to be a doctor, not going to be a lawyer, not going to be an engineer. What are they going to do? What is 80% of the population going to do? And if you look at the population, when my grandfather was born in 1900, the world's population was 1.9 billion. Today, the world's population is over 7 billion. If we continue to grow the way we're growing, by the middle of this century, the world's population will be over 11 billion people. So my grandfather, who I knew, we went from 1.9 billion to over 11 billion. What are we going to do with all these people? It's easy for me. Social marketing. We're connecting with people, and these social markets are being monetized. And all I'm saying, Holly, is getting back to what you said about President Obama. I would, please let me know when he talks about it, when he gets up in front of an audience and says, instead of talking about jobs, they keep saying jobs, jobs, jobs. No, social marketing. Join a social market that's monetized and that rewards sharing. I've never heard him say it.
Well, I think it's an interesting concept. I think in this day and age, we're all getting involved on sort of a micro level into a lot of things, and I like the way you're talking about, that sort of thing. Obviously, we all come into this from a different place. You talked about, saying having a big corporate job or having a different kind of job. Now, you came into this. Now, we've alluded to this a lot in the interview, but we haven't talked too much about the specifics here. You came into this from a sports career, from a very successful, arguably sports career, I would say, from, we talked about your early 25 years. Well, then at Stanford, you played both baseball and football, and I understand there was a very specific play that you got to witness, unfortunately, at the time that it happened. So tell us a little about your career before this. A lot of people say, all right, that's easy for him to say. Maybe he's had a successful social networking career, but what else does he know? You've had great success in sports, so tell us a little bit about your sports career.
Well, I appreciate it. You can tell I'm passionate about the politics.
Of course, yeah.
But the sports career, I was very fortunate. When I was in high school, you're correct. I had to start to narrow down my focus, and I ended up playing baseball and football. And I graduated from high school, Edison High School in Huntington Beach, and I was very fortunate. I was drafted by the New York Yankees out of high school, and I tell this story because it's kind of fun, because I was offered, Mr. Steinbrenner offered me $80,000 in 1979, the year before you were born, and that was a lot of money in 1979, $80,000 to sign. And the round right after me was Don Mattingly, who's the manager for the Dodgers. And had I signed and I'd taken the money, and I will bet you Don Mattingly he probably signed for $20,000. So I was getting $60,000 more than Don Mattingly, who turned out to be quite an outstanding baseball player. And I think back, what if I had signed, Don Mattingly and I, barring any injuries, would have been playing together, teammates in Yankee Stadium, because I was a very good baseball player. But my father said, go to college, because my dad really valued education, and he wanted me to go to Harvard. And I was accepted to Harvard. And my dad, when he said, oh, Mike, Harvard's, my dad thought Harvard was God's university, because he went to Syracuse University, and he remembers when he got out of baseball, he would go in for interviews, and if there was a Harvard graduate that was interviewing, the Harvard graduate would get the job. So he thought, well, gosh, being a concerned, caring father, I want my son, when he graduates, to get the job. Well, this was back in 1979. Stanford had this running back named Darren Nelson, and he was probably one of the greatest running backs in college football during that day. He was the first running back to rush for 1,000 yards and catch 50 passes. I mean, he was Barry Sanders before Barry Sanders, Darren Nelson, a phenomenal player. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame, and he played 12 years of NFL football. Well, he was in long jumping at Stanford, and he pulled the tendon off of his hamstring. They had to operate, so they were without a running back. And at the time, there was a coach at Stanford named Jim Fossil, and Jim Fossil, I don't know if you remember him, maybe when you were at NYU, he was the coach for the New York Giants, Jim Fossil. Well, he was the quarterback coach at Stanford, and this is back in 1979 when the NC2A manual wasn't this thick. It was a smaller rules. So he came down to Edison High School in Huntington Beach, and it was I was walking through graduation in June. I had already had my roommates picked out where I was going to live in Cambridge. I was signed, sealed, delivered to Harvard. And he came down without telling my father, you can't do this today, it's illegal. And he found me on campus, going through the graduation walkthrough, took me, said, hey, Mike, let's go to lunch. Without my dad knowing, took me to lunch, and for 2 hours said, Mike, you can come to Stanford and you can play baseball and you can play football, and we've got better weather than Boston, and you're a great player. And my head was getting bigger and bigger, and I was floating on the wall. And after about two and a half hours, I said, being an impressionable 17-year-old, I'm going to go to Stanford. So I came home and I said, Dad, I think I want to go to Stanford. And, as you know, back then when you're 17, it's the last person that tells you you're great. So it was the last person that talked to me. And my dad, Irish, German, temper, he got all upset. What are you talking about? How can you do this? So, but he calmed down and he said, okay, go to Stanford. Well, I was very fortunate because I went to school. I was in the same class with a guy named John Elway. And John, that was like, I was fortunate because then I had gone to Harvard. I would have never experienced, but I played with probably, arguably, the greatest quarterback ever. And the reason I say that is I love Joe Montana, and I love Terry Bradshaw, and Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers. None of them could do what John Elway did. None of them. Now, sure, you could say, well, did you go to a bowl game? No, we didn't, because our band came on the field. But, that's not the point. He was amazing. And for what he did in the NFL, John Elway played in 5 Super Bowls. And the last 2 years of his career, which is unheard of, his last 2 years, won back-to-back Super Bowls and was the MVP his last one, and then retired. I mean, I could go on and on about John Elway, but he truly, and I hope this gets out viral. I'm going to hopefully take this because I want this to go viral, because I don't know if John knows this, but, you know, John, you were the greatest, and it was an honor and privilege to play with John. And Stanford turned out to be, you know, an amazing place. I met so many wonderful people. It's a great school.
Well, and from Stanford
yeah,
to the
that was a wonderful,
right?
wonderful experience. And what was great is I got to play baseball. And I played with a guy named Mark Marcus, my coach at Stanford. He's still the coach at Stanford.
Wow.
And he's one of the greatest baseball coaches around. And I played with Coach Stotts, who's still there. He's the greatest assistant college coach. And it was just wonderful. We went to the College World Series twice in Omaha. So even though we didn't go to a bowl game, I was able to have fun on the baseball field. But our football career at Stanford was amazing. Playing with John and our team, we could beat anyone on any given Saturday. We have a record, actually, Holly. We have a record at Stanford that will never be broken. We have, because sports is entertainment. It's the entertainment industry. We have a record. In 1980, we had the highest average home attendance in the history of Stanford. We averaged 60-some thousand people every game. Now, this is a school where half the school doesn't even talk about football. They don't care about football. So it's not like Ohio State or University of Alabama or Florida or University of Texas or USC. They're indifferent. Well, in 1980, we had the highest average attendance in the history of Stanford football. And the reason that record won't ever be broken is a few years ago, they rebuilt the whole stadium and reduced the size of the stadium from 85,000 down to 55,000. So the most Stanford can hold is 55,000, so they'll never break that record.
That's pretty cool.
Well, we entertained. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I could tell you.
Because
I could tell you. What's that?
I said, well, obviously you entertained because from there you got picked up, right? You got to go to the big show.
Oh yeah, I kind of just I followed on John Elway's coattails. I mean,
okay.
You know, John was the #1 pick in the NFL draft, and I was the 8th round pick. So, but if it weren't for John, I probably wouldn't have been picked at all. And so I got drafted my senior year. Well, actually, let me go back here. My junior year, the Oakland A's drafted me, and you'll enjoy this. This will be a story.
Turning down your baseball career.
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing. Going back to when I was drafted out of high school, I was drafted by the New York Yankees. Do you know who the manager was for the New York Yankees in 1979?
No.
Billy Martin. He's a famous guy, and he, when my dad was playing for the Reds in Cincinnati, they were roommates. So this is kind of this is a little nepotism. I'm gonna share with you how relationships are important. So Billy and my dad were roommates, so they knew each other. So out of high school, and my grandfather was a scout for the Yankees, and so I get drafted by my grandfather's team, and Billy Martin's the manager. Then my junior year, the Oakland A's drafted me and offered me $60,000. So I went from $80,000 out of high school to $60,000. So I dropped down $20,000. Well, guess who the manager was for the Oakland A's in 1981? Billy Martin. And then my senior year, the Raiders draft me in the 8th round. And a little bit of nepotism. Guess where Mr. Al Davis went to college? Syracuse University.
With your dad.
Right. I drafted by this. So I get drafted by the team where my dad's connected to Mr. Davis. And then the Yankees draft me again. And guess who's the manager of the Yankees that year, the next year? Billy Martin. I mean, every team I got drafted by, my dad had a connection. So that's my nepotism, you know. But my senior year, The Raiders offered me $25,000 to sign. I was an 8th-round pick. The Yankees offered me $8,000 and a bus ticket to Fort Lauderdale.
Wow.
So the lesson, the moral for all the parents out there, the longer you play American football, your value in other sports declines. And the NFL, do you know what the NFL stands for, Holly?
What?
Not for long. American football, and we should get into this, is very injurious to your body.
Yeah, it's not good for you. People don't laugh. Well, I keep trying to explain to people that's why you get, it's also with, we used to joke about this with acting as well. You spend your whole life working up this skill, but then you can really only do it for so long. And with NFL, it's because you'll be injured in a certain amount of time, or you'll be too old or not fast enough or whatever it is, because, we evolve as humans, and the next generation is naturally going to start putting out something that can't yet be matched, And I always say that, they pay them $40 million in the first year or whatever nowadays because they may only play for a year or two. That's got to be your whole life. That's your whole life salary. That's not $40 million a year. That's $40 million for 20 years that you're not going to be able to work in the future.
That's right. And that's why we're starting the College Football Alumni Association. Because college football, Holly, is professional football.
Oh, it certainly is if you play for UT or UCLA.
Or Stanford.
Yep.
It's big bucks. Do you
Yep.
know how much the athletic directors make now in salary?
No, I don't ask those kinds of questions.
Oh, millions. And the coaches. We have at UC Berkeley, I think the coach is making, I don't know what, millions and millions of dollars. And the players who are critical to the entertainment of the college, they can't, they can't sell, they can't do autographs. I mean, Johnny Touchdown, he got all in trouble with, doing autographs, and the kids at Ohio State, they got tattoos and they gave memorabilia in trade for that. And the university and the NC2A saying, no, you can't do that. I argue that that's unconstitutional. They have every right to earn a living. In my opinion, the NC2A has gone way overboard. And what we need for the College Football Alumni Association, we're looking for the next Marvin Miller. Do you know who Marvin Miller is or was? He was the man that joined Major League Baseball in the early 60s. And he got involved with Curt Flood, and that was the beginning. Baseball was the beginning of taking sports before Curt Flood and Major League Baseball. If you were a professional football player, basketball player, or baseball player, you were virtually a slave. They owned you. There was no free agency. Well, Marvin Miller was instrumental in changing sports.
So let's bring that full circle, right? So Marvin Miller was instrumental in changing sports and making sure that people got the money that they needed. Nowadays, we know that you can make $40 million, when you're playing football, or being a professional coach, you can make in the millions. Bring that back to social networking. Bring that back to social marketing. Can you do that now in social marketing? Can you have that same career? I mean, what are the prospects? Who's going to bring that together and bring that front and center and full circle?
Well, that's a great question. The sports world is a whole unique animal. It's what we need to do as former professional athletes is to let people know the chances of you becoming an Urban Meyer, who's the head coach at Ohio State, who's a great coach, or becoming an Aaron Rodgers or a Michael Jordan. There's a better chance of being hit by a lightning bolt. Or in your industry, when you're the entertainment industry, to become a Sigourney Weaver or a Harrison Ford, if it's your passion, you're going to pursue that. You're going to pursue theater or athletics, but it's for the masses. Social marketing, in my opinion, you pick a good company, and Amway's a good company, Mary Kay's a good company, Herbalife's a good company, Avon's a good company. Those companies are in the top 10 of the top 10 direct marketing companies in the world. I have a company called Isogenics. great company, number 36 in the world.
Yeah,
It's
tell
a
us more
company.
about your company at this
Pardon
point.
me?
Tell us more about your company.
Oh, okay. Well, it's Isagenix is one of my portfolio social networks that I believe in. It's a health and wellness social network. It was started 11 years ago by Jim and Kathy Coover. It's headquartered in Chandler, Arizona, and it's one of the 52 companies to last over 10 years, and it'll be around 10 years from now, and it'll be around 20 years from now. Last year they did $335 million in revenue, and we do business in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Australia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, and we're soon opening up China and Colombia, and hopefully we'll be in Europe soon as well. But Isagenix focus is health and wellness, and the reason it's growing so fast is you can't play golf, you can't exercise, you can't go to the movies, you can't do your job, you can't be a good parent unless you have your health. You know, there's a saying, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And the biggest challenge we have with the whole healthcare industry changing, we need to have what we call self-care. People need to be conscious of what are the technologies and the knowledge we have to take care of our body, so that we don't get into diabetes and obesity and all the diseases that are out there. What can we do? Our number one goal, if we don't take care of our health, we can't function. So that's why Isagenix, I believe, in what the son of the founder, his name is Eric Coover. He's 26 years old. He was on the Arizona State golf team, scratch golfer. He decided to forego the PGA Tour and work full-time with Isagenix, and he said a few months ago that Isagenix will be the Apple computer of health and wellness. And what he means by that is Apple computer, I was familiar with, because when I was a freshman in 1979, I remember hearing about a small little company in Cupertino run by this guy named Steve Jobs. And I'm talking to you on my iMac, and I've seen how Apple has evolved with the technology that they've brought to people all over the world. Well, you're seeing technology come in to health and wellness, and Isagenix is involved in 3 areas. One is weight loss. 1 out of 3 people in the United States is obese. We have 90 million Americans that are obese, so that's a pretty good market to be in. Second is energy and performance, athletes. We just signed up Ray Lewis, the linebacker for the Ravens.
Yep.
He's now with Isagenix. Serena and Venus Williams use Isagenix. This before I did this interview, this is an E+ shot. It's a healthy energy shot. Isagenix is a great company, but the third area, the third region of really exciting, which is going to be the biggest market for Isagenix, is anti-aging. You're a beautiful woman, Holly. You should look at what the technology that's going on in anti-aging. It's unbelievable. There's someone on this planet right now that's living right now that will live to 150 years of age. Did you know that?
I did.
Yeah. And I believe probably in the coming years there'll be someone that lives to 200. And Isagenix has focused in on anti-aging. The chromosome, at the end of the chromosome, it's called the telomere or telomere. And when you're born, the telomere is a certain length. And as you age, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, and then we die. Well, Isagenix has a product called Product B that is slowing that down. And it's science. They won a Nobel Prize for this. This is not hocus pocus. And so it's slowing down the process, this process of the telomere shortening, and we're working on reversing it. So Holly, I've never heard anyone say, gosh, I enjoy getting old.
I'm a huge fan, but that's my personal thing. I think there are a lot of women out there who are very, very interested in anti-aging. I'm more pro-aging myself. I'm very for it. It's one of my favorite things that I've done so far, and it's good because I don't have a choice in the matter per se in the actual aging process. Maybe I won't look as old, but
Well, I think the brain. I agree with you in the sense that the older you get, the wiser you are. No question. I embrace longevity because of experience. I mean, I say you fail your way to the top. You know, you adversity. So no question, I embrace longevity and age. But I'm saying your skin, your internal organs. We can, Holly. You're someone that I can't wait to, after this interview, to share the information with you. And actually, anyone that's listening, just go to isamovie, ISAMOVIE.com, isamovie.com, and if you like what you see, you can call me at 415-894-2432. Let me give that to you one more time. 415-894-2432. That's my Google Voice number. And thank you, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. I love Google. I love Google Plus. By the way, 2 Stanford guys. A little plug for Stanford. So, and my email is Michael Dotterer, MichaelDotterer @gmail.com. So I am a Google maniac. I love Google. I am on Google Calendar, Google Plus, love YouTube, love Google Hangouts, Google Voice. I mean, I could go on and on. Gmail.
Well, so I think anybody watching BaseNet right now, there you go. You have a famous NFL player's email and phone number, courtesy of this one interview. But I would be remiss, and we are, believe it or not, running out of time. I didn't think it was possible. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to talk about the Super Bowl.
Well, you know, Holly, it was a great experience. I'll never forget when I got drafted. We had a mini camp. And this was in 1983, and with the Raiders, they stick the veterans with the rookies, and I was a rookie, and I remember walking into this room, a hotel room in Los Angeles, and this big burly guy, I just saw a shadow of him as I opened the hotel room, and he turned around, and for many of you, Holly, you might not know his name, but Muhammad Ali knows him because he fought Muhammad Ali in Mile High Stadium. His name was Lyle Alzado. And he was quite a character. He was an actor, a Super Bowl champion, and just an amazing guy. He actually played Santa Claus when we would go to the children's hospital. So that was my first experience rooming with Lyle Alzado. And then being part of the team, it was amazing. I played with Marcus Allen, Jim Plunkett, Ted Hendricks, Cliff Branch, Ray Guy, Greg Pruitt. I mean, I could go on, and Kenny King, Frank Hawkins. I mean, I could go on and on. Howie Long was a teammate. Tom Flores was our coach. Art Shell, Willie Brown. It was amazing. I felt actually a lot like, who was the guy? He wrote a book about the Detroit Lions, because I was on the team, Holly, but I was injured. And, you know, I would practice, but it was very difficult for me because I had visions when I was little to be playing in Yankee Stadium, and here I am as a professional football player, injured on a great team. And I was on the team, but, you know, it was very hard for me. And looking back, I was very fortunate because, you know, they say timing is everything. My rookie year, we won the Super Bowl. And I'm in the Super Bowl, you know, I'm in the picture. I'm in Canton, Ohio. If you go and you look at the Raiders Super Bowl team, I'm there. And to be part of a championship team, what that taught me, and this is a lesson for all, whatever you do, whether you're part of a sports team or you're part of a great company like Kimberly-Clark, you know, whatever you do, it's a team. I don't care if you're the janitor or you're the star quarterback. Everybody that's part of that organization contributes to the success of that organization. And that's what being part of a Super Bowl team, even though I wasn't Marcus Allen scoring touchdowns and being the MVP, I was practicing. I was helping the team get better. Actually, the day of the Super Bowl, I didn't suit up for the Super Bowl because I was injured. But I did help my teammate, Lyle Alzado. He had 50 Super Bowl tickets, and he wanted me to sell the Super Bowl tickets. So I sold his Super Bowl tickets and made him very happy. I don't know if you know what 50 Super Bowl tickets would get you, but Lyle was very happy. So I could go on, but I want to thank you, Holly, and I want to thank Ed Jupin and BaseNet. As I said earlier in this interview, I hope that I can become a paid member of BaseNet. I hope Ed monetizes this, and I hope a percentage goes to you, Holly, and I hope you set up a structure where I can go out and share BaseNet, and I become a partner, and if I share BaseNet, there's some reward mechanism in place. That's my dream.
Well, I'm sure we would all like to help you have your dream, and we all look forward to taking your money. But most importantly, we're really glad to have had your voice and your face on today. Thanks again, Michael.
Thank you, Holly. It's great speaking with you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, you too. Back to you.
Thank you, Holly. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in to the first episode of WorldviewZ. I'd like to thank our announcer, Gene White, our executive producer, Jessica Moskowitz, and my field crew, Ed Jupin and Larry Marks, for their help in producing this episode. See you all next time.
Thank you for watching WorldviewZ. From Arlington and Boston, Massachusetts, to Los Angeles, New York City, the Midwest, and everywhere in between, we have you covered. From the world headquarters of BaseNet, I'm Gene White. On behalf of myself, our host Allison Lee, and the rest of our staff, thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next time.